Welcome to Critical Foolery. So today is part 2 of the series. We're going to talk about DPS versus Alpha Strike and builds. So when you're setting up to build DPS versus Alpha Strike and the kind of nuances in between those. So depending on your play style, DPS is as it stands for. My goodness, English is hard today. Damage per second. The firepower is basically the alpha strike, what you see here. And the reason why I bring up the DPS is because firepower and the alpha strike is it's a 1 and then you might be down 6 seconds. It's good if you're trying to pop somebody or take out a component or that kind of thing. Or peeking out and then hiding again. Now, damage over time though, it would be something like this Rifleman 2C. And the reason is it has a 12 alpha strike, but what you don't have the numbers taken into account is that it's an ultra AC, so you can double tap, and that you're doing that 12 damage every 3/4 of a second. And you can do that over long distances, or you can just double tap and use the ultra side and really increase. So it's really good for if you're in a heavier mech and you're going to be just facing somebody down. If you can hit them from longer range, the amount of ballistic knockback and cockpit shutter and that kind of thing is very disheartening, and it can throw off a lot of people. You can push, even though you don't do necessarily as much damage, you can push a lot of people back. They can't really see what they're doing sometimes if you hit in the right spot around the cockpit, and just the flash from getting hit. I would say it causes pause more than lasers or missiles sometimes when you're just getting absolutely destroyed by the ballistics. The other thing to keep in mind with the DPS is certain weapon systems. We'll get it in it here. The smaller versions actually fire more often, and the SRM2s and SRM6s are a good example of this. So SRM2s fire every 2 seconds. SRM6s fire every 3 3/4 seconds. So depending on what type of build you want to do, sometimes picking the lighter tonnage, if you have the slots for it and the hard points, you can actually put out more damage over time than if you were to get the heavier version. Not always, but there's certain times where that is the case. So SRM4s are even a shorter cooldown at 3 seconds, kind of the middle ground. Now, alpha strikes. Alpha strikes are really good for close quarter fighting, or when you want to basically take yourself up to max heat. And heat, we'll get into heat in a second here, but heat in a DPS build, you can sustain and fire. That's kind of your playground. An alpha build is either has a long cooldown, so it throws everything out at once and it has a long cooldown, or it has a lot of heat it has to dissipate before the next one. That could be something basically where you like this, where you had a whole bunch of SRM6s and then you threw some more SRM4s maybe on the side, upgrade them from SRM2s. You're just hoping to throw as much damage as possible, as quick as possible each time you see them. So you're limiting your face time, essentially. You're limiting the amount of time that somebody can retaliate against you. Another one I like that kind of has that alpha build is the hunchback here with the crazy hunchback with the ultra AC 20s, because it's a 40 alpha strike, but you can use the ultra to do 80 pinpoint damage if you get in a good favorable area, or when you cause a assault and heavy to turn around and reconsider their choices when they get smacked by this. Now, for the most part, it's basically just up to your play style. If you can find a good spot in the fight to hide from, or not hide from, but like where you're not noticed. That's the big thing, finding a spot, a good position, and you can pump out the DPS. The DPS is amazing. The alpha strikes are really good, but they tend to be somewhat splashy, or can be splashy. It all depends on kind of the mech you have and what you plan on doing with it. A light with a bunch of heavy machine guns are going to be doing a damage over time, which can absolutely shred and destroy assaults through the back, but they are very fragile, so it's a very different style of play. That being said, a light with a very alpha strike build is probably going to be running in between buildings and stuff, and launching or firing and forgetting and trying to get to the next point of cover, running back and forth, and those can cause a lot of mayhem in the back lines. For every other weight class, it all depends on what you want to do, because it can be, you can rely on your armor to have you survive until your next alpha strike, or you can use your armor to basically give out the DPS. One of the very scary things to come against, though, is an outfitted assault rifle with an alpha strike, something like 2 heavy gauze where it's 50 points of pinpoint damage, or MRM 40s. Like, it's absolutely insane. Now, getting back to heat is a major concern, because that is kind of your balancing mechanic and allows you how much to do, whether you're an alpha strike build or a DPS. It's how fast you dissipate the heat and how fast you dissipate the heat on different maps. Maps with the thermal, like the terra therma level, your heat sinks don't work as well, which makes sense. And cold levels like Frozen City and stuff, they work better. So keeping in mind that laser builds tend to run hot on the best of situations, will be harder to run on terra therma there. Running those on Frozen City and stuff is kind of a nice bonus, because your heat sinks are working better. Now, there's a thing called ghost heat, and we'll get into it here. Ghost heat is another balancing mechanic that allows only so many of one type of weapon per se, and some mechs have a quirk to allow more than one of those weapons, or a bonus to those weapons, I should say. So if there's a 6 limit, you could maybe do 7. So we're going to take a look here. When we pop in another medium pulse, up here you can see there's a heat sign. Firing more than 6 small lasers or medium lasers simultaneously will result in a heat spike higher than normal. So it's ghost heat. Now, you could load this thing with a whole bunch more than this and possibly eat it, but it does, I think it increases exponentially from what I've seen. That being said, there's different amount of weapon limits on Inner Sphere versus Clan mechs, and obviously each type. As you can see there, it says 6 small or medium lasers. Now, if you get into the micro lasers, you can have a lot more than that. We should just strip the mech. That's what we're gonna do. So micro lasers, we can pop in here. Oh, that's a medium pulse, my bad. Or micro pulse lasers. We can pop in, and I think it's 11. So if you want to play around with different weapon combinations, you can, because right here it says 10, so we can only fire 10 of these at once. Now, that being said, if you have the setup for it, you could put it on a left and right punch, kind of switching between an alpha and a DPS. Just keep that in mind, because that can affect your build. So we can only fire 10. If I want, we'll leave those on the arms. I can fire them all at once and I don't have to worry about it. And then we can put a large here. It won't affect the 6 or the 10 limit, because each category has their own limits, and it keeps them separate, if that makes sense to everybody. It allows you to mix and match and have more freedom. The amount of ghost heat, I'm not sure the formula, I don't entirely know, but you can build builds that will be able to handle the ghost heat. It's just you won't be able, you'll have to dissipate all that extra heat. So keep that in mind. If we go back, yes, just to show with the hunchback here, in the quirks, we should have an extra, it should say something along the range of, there it is, ultra autocannon 20, heat sink limit +1, because normally an ultra autocannon you can only have, depending on the mech, you can only have one before you start running into the balancing mechanic. Now, with that being said, when you hit that limit, as I mentioned before, if this only had a limit of 1, you can do the left-right combo, and you just have to wait a little bit in between. You can't fire them both immediately at the same time, but if you went like left side, right side, left side, right side, you're not going to incur that ghost heat. Jump jets also affect your heat. So when you're using your jump jets, from what I've noticed, you are generating a little bit of heat depending on how much jump jets you are. Mostly it just slows down your dissipation. It's never much to generate actual heat above and beyond what you already have. With that in mind, heat sinks put into the legs will cool more when in water. It's a little nuance that is good to know. So if you're on like River City or anything like that, keep that in mind. When you run into terra firma there, don't run into the lava, because the lava does actually heat you up quite a bit. So anyways, I hope that's been helpful. Stay tuned for more kind of beginner things to know, possibly even more veteran type things. Maybe leave a comment down below letting us know if that helped you out, or if there's anything that you found that was interesting that you'd like to pass on. And I hope you enjoyed. We'll see you in the next one.